All right, we are back with another instant reaction video. We just watched Penn State embarrassingly lose to Michigan 24-15. I don't even know where to start. I'm annoyed. I'm angry. I'm not happy. Um, yeah, hopefully we get some viewers that can add some comments and stuff because I don't even know what to say. I'm just frustrated and upset. So, Zach, maybe you can be more analytical and less with your heart. I don't know.
I don't think so.
Yeah,
I'll
not
try,
after that
but
one.
I mean, I'll kind of start where you and I were just chatting a few minutes ago, which is, and I'm sure I'm going to get roasted in the comments, but like you couldn't ask for a year where Michigan and Ohio State were more beatable than they were this year with the defense that Penn State had. And I know they're going to say, well, we didn't have to throw the ball because we didn't have to, and blah 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 blah. That game was there as at least a 50-50 shot, if not better, to win that game. But again, it played out just like the Ohio State game in that mathematically we were in it, and it just never felt like, though, that Michigan was anything other than in control of the game. And that's just discouraging because 7 or 8 points in today's, and we'll talk about 7 or 8, but in today's college football, that's nothing. I mean, that's nothing. You look at like the Oregons and the Washingtons and the ability that some of these teams have to put up points in a hurry. And it just, when you have a team that I think is a contender, and then you feel like 7 or 8 points is a mountain that you're just not going to be able to climb and come back on. It's just super discouraging. And we'll talk a little bit more, I'm sure, in the specifics of the offense, but I thought the run game was generally competent enough. I mean, I thought we got the run game that in my mind as you're playing out in your head. If Penn State wins, what does it look like? How does it happen? I didn't expect much more than what we got in the run game. We got what I actually thought. If we get that plays into what I think needs to happen to get us a W. Katron Allen, I think, was the better back. Singleton ran pretty well early too, but for me, and I texted it in the group chat, and maybe I was being a bit overly dramatic, but when we kicked a field goal, when Penn State kicked a field goal on its opening drive, when it had 1st and goal from the 4, I said, game's over. Game's over. Yeah. And it seemed super dramatic, but in a game that ended up with only 39 total points, and in reality it was really 17-9 before the game pretty much got, wrapped up. You just, the way I look at it, you're only going to have maybe 3 trips into Michigan's red zone, if at best, right? Probably like 2 or 1. You get inside the 4, you have to score a touchdown. You just have to score a touchdown. And what was really discouraging about that drive is the Penn State's first drive, they ran the ball really well. Didn't have any big giant chunk plays, as is normal, but Nick Singleton actually was picking up good yardage on every carry. And then we get down to the goal line and we mix it up. And we run the power T and we try to run sideways, which just is not going to work against Michigan. They're just too fast, too strong, too good on defense. And then I think we ran a crossing pattern on 2nd down, which I was okay with. But then the 3rd down call was just horrendous. It was just horrendous. We threw a corner fade to Cephas. Aller actually put a really nice, probably his best throw of the game, frankly.
I think by far his best throw of the game.
Dropped it in the bucket. It would have been a really tough catch, and I don't know if he was going to get his feet in bounds, but I mean, he put it right into Cephas's breadbasket, and he didn't hang on. I don't know if he had his feet in, but I don't like that call. I was, in my mind, I'm thinking that we're not kicking it. Once it got the 1st and goal from the 4, in my mind, you're not kicking a field goal. So on 3rd down there, where it's like 3rd and 4, in reality, I think you run the ball there because, for a number of reasons. One, I think you have to trust in your ability to pick up positive yardage and get a couple, at worst, get a couple yards, and then put yourself in a situation where on 4th and 2, as the head coach, you have the full spectrum of what you can do. You can kick if you really want to. I don't think it would have been smart to, but you could have. You also could have gone for it. And from the 2, the run is still in play and the pass is in play. Whereas with that 3rd down play call, if Penn State had decided to go for it on 4th down, now it was 4th and 4. You probably aren't calling a run play. So now all of a sudden you're sort of telegraphing to the defense what's going to happen. I'm not happy with your across the board. I thought that whole that series, the end of that series was just brutal. And you're not going to beat Michigan with field goals. With the offense that we have, we're just not going to get that many opportunities down there. And we needed 3 touchdowns, probably bare minimum today, to win the game. And that, I don't think we got back inside the 10-yard line after that. So for me, it was super discouraging, that series. And then immediately thereafter, Michigan made them pay and scored the touchdown to go ahead that, frankly, the game wasn't over at that point, but after it was 7-3, Michigan was never threatened again.
Right.
And so in some respects, it kind of was the game. If Penn State punches in 7 there, does Michigan respond with a touchdown? Even if they do, it's 7-7 and everything's just kind of settled. But
I think that whole drive kind of, I don't know how I want to word it, but it encapsulates exactly what the problem with this whole game was. Poor play calling, poor execution on the plays that are called. Again, I don't think we called good plays, but if we're going to call these plays, we got to execute a little bit better. And it just was across the board. The whole game was bad play calling. I mean, we haven't even gotten into the 2-point conversion bull crap. I mean, just absolute idiocy, terrible coaching, just awful, absolutely terrible coaching. And that's why our headline is that without Jim Harbaugh, arguably one of the best coaches in college football, Michigan still outcoached James Franklin and Mike Yurcich. I said it in the group chat. I'm going to keep saying it. Fire James Franklin, fire Mike Yurcich, and offer whatever Manny Diaz wants to be the head coach moving forward. He has an elite defense. This Michigan team, I don't think they're not a national championship team, but they're the best team in the Big Ten, which is still something to be proud of for Michigan. And Manny Diaz's defense did exactly what they needed to do. Yes, you can talk about the fact that Michigan didn't throw the ball, all this stuff. They still had 227 rushing yards today. I mean, that's a great game, but it's not this unbeatable 450 yards, whatever it was last year. I mean, our defense is elite, and I can never make fun of Iowa ever again, because this must be what they go through every freaking year. Our defense is elite. We have a phenomenal defense, and our offense is just atrocious. So our numbers keep growing here. Anybody that's just joining us, whether you're a Michigan fan or a Penn State fan or just a college football fan, add stuff to the comments. We're going to go until exactly 4 o'clock, so about 25 more minutes. Add comments. We'd love to hear you. I know Zach has plenty to say about the 2-point conversion. Let's go to this comment from our friend Carson here. I know this is controversial, but I want to hear your opinions. Does Drew Aller suck? I'm overreacting, but is he really that good? So I'm going to take
Devin,
this one
I can
first,
answer
Zach.
that one for you.
Oh, Jordan, I didn't even realize you were here. Sorry, go ahead.
He sucks. I'm just kidding. He doesn't really suck. I think the issue for him is he doesn't even have enough time to get set back there. And yeah, his accuracy hasn't been great, but he's also not seeing the field properly. Like his run, I think, Zach, you said it perfectly. Clifford would have had 70 rushing yards today. And I think that's like the piece that's really missing that will open up the pass game. I don't know how you guys feel, but that's from watching it while I was driving. That's what it looked like to me. So,
yeah, I'm going to have to disagree. I think Drew Aller had time today. I think our offensive line did what they needed to. I think he gives up too quick. I think there are times where he actually has more time than he thinks he has, and he just chucks it and hopes for the best. And he has not been accurate at all in the 2 games that matter, Ohio State and Michigan. He has played terrible, and I want to give him the benefit of the doubt of being a 19-year-old kid. He's never played in this type of a game, but you have one under your belt now, and you just played the best game of your life last week against Maryland. You got to come in with some confidence, man. And to go, let me make sure I don't misquote this, to go 10 for 22 for 70 yards. So averaging 3 yards a completion, or 3 yards per attempt. That's terrible. That's just awful. And I want to say, again, I think Yurcich called a horrible game. I think it was terrible coaching, but Drew Aller has to be better. And I don't understand, what did we not see today that we saw last week against Maryland? No Bo Prabula. Where was that package? We didn't run it a single time today. And obviously we needed a spark because our offense was terrible. So I don't think there's any problem with putting Bo out there for a series or another, even a play, just to give some sort of a spark. So, Zach, I'll let you hit that. I'm going to throw up a couple comments. What was that?
I said, or the rest of the season.
Yeah. So I'm going to put up a couple comments here. You guys that are commenting, I promise you we're going to get to as many as we can. I'm going to skip a couple just because this is what we're talking about right now. Jaden says it feels like Aller has zero confidence in himself. So Zach, what are your thoughts on Aller, his performance, all that?
So I'm going to just quickly to address one of the comments that I've been railing on all year. And then I'll get to Aller. Brooklyn or BKLN USA says the offense always looks like it's moving in slow motion.
Yep.
Running backs always standing still when they get the ball. I am so sick and tired of the shotgun, side saddle, handoff, slow motion, baby step bullshit, right? Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards, they popped a couple big ones today, but largely their running game didn't do a whole lot other than they just plowed ahead and got 3 or 4 yards. And those guys get the ball at a sprint, right? The quarterback's under center. I'm so tired of the Franklin Yursich reluctance to go under center. They think they're so smart and that modern football is better than what we've known for decades, right? Why would we go back to that caveman style? And Franklin with his, I don't recruit fullbacks. There's no fullbacks. We don't play fullbacks. But then you see all these run plays where they motion Tyler Warren and Theo Johnson into the backfield and then ask them to be lead blockers.
Yeah.
They used to do that with Mike Gesicki back in 16 and 17. They're not fullbacks. So do you want fullbacks or do you not want fullbacks? Because you always you laugh at us all the time in your analytics and all your bullshit that fullbacks are dumb. And then you put non-fullbacks into a position where you ask them to be fullbacks. It just drives me nuts. And the problem for me is it has been the same for like 4 different offensive coordinators. So it's a Franklin thing. The fullback is a Franklin thing. The putting the tight ends in as H-backs is a Franklin thing. The side saddle shotgun run game is a Franklin thing. Reluctance to go under center and run the ball with a, in sort of an I-form setting, or even the pistol. We had a lot of success early with Singleton in the pistol.
Mm-hmm.
Why not go back to it? Let these guys run at full speed, especially Singleton. It drives me nuts. So great comment to Brooklyn, USA. Thank you. I appreciate that. So I could go on my rant, get that off my chest. But back to Aller, I don't think he sucks. I just don't want a pocket passer in today's college football. I want the dual threat guy 11 times out of 10. I think he helped himself and the team today with his ability to run and his willingness to run. I do agree with you, Devin, and disagree with Jordan. I'm not pinning this one on the offensive line. I thought for the most part, he had some clean pockets. Did he get flushed out of the pocket a few times? Sure. You're playing Michigan. It's going to happen.
Right.
We have seen in the recent and distant past in these matchups with Ohio State and Michigan, you have seen Sean Clifford, Trace McSorley, Christian Hackenberg been put on their ass like a second after the ball snaps because the DN beats the offensive tackle so bad or throws the offensive tackle into the quarterback. We didn't see that today. I really thought there wasn't any massively blown breakdowns on the offensive line. You didn't see. I really don't think, as far as the offensive tackle defensive end matchup, that's what I'm always talking about, or especially in the Ohio State matchup. I don't think we lost that. I think it was kind of a draw, right? I think there were some times where Michigan got pressure up the middle. I really think the difference was that their defensive tackles, they had some guys that are just massive. Grant, right. Graham, and the other guy I can't think of, but they play three defensive tackles, and they're all like 300-pounders, and they can move. And so I think we got beat a little bit on the inside, but I thought on the edge we played pretty well. Aller, there were some plays where guys were open, and he sailed a couple throws high. He missed some throws. Then there's also a lot of plays where guys just didn't get open. So it's so hard, and we've been talking about this ad nauseum all year. It's really hard for us who aren't in the huddle, who aren't in the practice room and aren't in the film room to know who is the bigger culprit. And I think it's just a shared problem. I think play calling is a huge part of it. I think it's a catch-22. When a team knows you can't do something, they force you to do that, right? And teams know we don't want to throw the ball down the field. The only way you break that tendency is to break that tendency. And it's so and I don't care if you're talking about football or any of us at our jobs, we do the things we're good at, or we do the things we think we're good at, and we stay away from the things that we don't think we're good at. But in football, you can't do that. The defense has a say as well. And so they play defense in a way to make you, try to do the things that you can't. And for me, it's just, you got to take some shots down the field. I feel like we didn't take any shots at all today. I mean, the one we took down the left sideline, Lambert Smith was not even running a route, and Aller overthrew him. And there were some throws where it wasn't even that Aller missed a guy. It was that nobody was there. And so either he saw something that wasn't there, or the receiver misread something. And it just was ugly all the way around. And I'm not giving up on him. I'm not. I don't think this is a situation where we have like a national contending team and the quarterback is the problem, and all we got to do is make a change at quarterback. I don't think that's the situation. I think some fans are always. You saw that with Clifford. I think you saw that with Clifford, and
I was that guy with Clifford.
I never
and
believed
I owe
that
Sean Clifford a huge apology.
We could we have gotten better quarterback play during the Clifford era? Yeah, there were guys out there better than him. Were we just the quarterback away? And the answer that we found out this year is no, because I think comparison between Clifford and Aller this year, I would say yes, Clifford had better weapons at his disposal last year, and I think I personally underestimated Parker Washington and Mitchell Tinsley. I thought they were just like okay last year, and Brenton Strange. I mean, I think those three guys were huge last year. I think they were really good. I know Parker Washington and Strange are both on the Jaguars roster. I think Tinsley made the 53-man for the Commanders. I'm not sure if he's still on it, but yeah. I think in hindsight, those guys played a really huge role. But the flip side is I think Aller has the better offensive line. I think Aller has a better offensive line than Clifford had for most of his career. So I don't know. I'm not ready to give up on him, but so this comment from James, go back to that comment from James Mosley, because that's the phrase that I've been using.
This one.
I think he said James Mosley is the name. Yeah, coaching malpractice. So if you're okay with it, Devin, I'm gonna jump in from there because that's
keep going. I'm just gonna cry over here like their interim coach.
I feel like now's a good segue because he threw that term out there, and that's the term I use. And I am so sick of the analytics crap. For all of you that are a baseball fan out there, I'm like sick of the sabermetrics crap as well. You don't chase the 2-point conversion early. Everybody knows that. Everybody knows that. You don't chase it early. You stay in the game and make the end of game matter. Make the other team play all the way till the clock reads 0. His first mistake was chasing the 2-point after Penn State scored a touchdown to make it 14-9 in the first half. Kick the extra point. Because, and I literally, in our group chat, I had people saying, I'm fine with that. I'm good with that. And I said, well, what happens when Michigan kicks a field goal? Now it's 17-8 or 17-9. And then you are chasing that point the rest of the game. From then on out, you're chasing that single point. And that's what happened. Michigan kicked a field goal, 17-9. Penn State's chasing the rest of the game. I hate the decision in that first half, but it's not the end of the world. What's the end of the world for me is when the score is 24-9, there is 2 minutes left or whatever it was, 1:40. You score a touchdown. It's 24-15. You're down 9. There's no book anywhere. I challenge any coach to show me some analytic book or some analytic stat that says when you're down 9 and you have a couple timeouts and there's enough time on the clock to get
2 minutes and 10 seconds, whatever it was.
You kick the extra point. You're down 8. You're still alive. Now, when you do the onside kick, which you're not going to get, Michigan gets the ball back. They know we have to get a first down. So you've put pressure. There's game pressure on them. When you go for 2 and don't get it, the game's over. Now, I don't even know why we did the onside kick. Why does it matter? You can't score 9 points in one possession. Somebody justify that decision for me. I'm trying to keep my patience with Franklin because I think there's a lot of credibility and merit to the argument that you always hear that you don't want to be like Nebraska, right? You don't want to be like Nebraska. But you could also be like Georgia, right?
Yeah.
Mark Richt was a pretty successful coach at Georgia. Georgia was a pretty successful program. They were often in the conversation, but not there at the end. Are we Georgia? I'm not saying we're Georgia. It's quite possible you fire Franklin, you bring somebody else in, and the program goes down. It's also quite possible you fire Franklin, you bring somebody else in, and the resources at the school and the program prestige and brand are good enough that somebody elevates it. I don't know. The question is, do you want to find out? Because I think the sample size is large enough at this point to know what we have with the guy we have.
Yeah, I was just losing my mind at that. Joel Klatt saying, oh, well, there's some analytics that you can go for 2 here because then you know what you need. No, you know what you need. You kick the extra point and you know exactly what you need. We need a touchdown and a 2-point conversion. That was one of the worst coaching decisions I may have ever seen in a potentially to take it from a 2-score to a 1-score game. Absolutely horrible. And then the play, the the design play, the swinging door bull crap. Like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
If you are that adamant, we have to go for 2 here. I guarantee you there's a better play in the book than
You
that.
have to have
I
some.
guarantee you could give the 3 of us sitting in Central PA, one of us played real competitive football. We could design a better play than that.
Well,
Why?
and the reality is,
Oh my God.
if you think that's the best play, that's even more. If you think in order to convert, you have to do something gimmicky, that's even all the more reason to kick the extra
Kick it.
point. If you have a 2-point play that you like, hey, we've saved this all year, we run it in practice, and it beats the defense 9 times out of 10, and nobody else has seen it. Okay, I can maybe no, in hindsight, no. There's under no circumstances can you go for 2 there. But I like if you have that play, maybe I could get behind it if you score. Even if we converted that, I'd still be on here railing about it.
Yeah,
honestly, because it's that dumb. It's that dumb. It's like you're a basketball coach, right? It's like being down 3 with a minute to go, or 5 seconds to go or something, and you draw up a play for a 2-point for try to get to the bucket. It's like you have. It's just like there's no analytics at all. It's just it is what it is, and everybody knows what it is, or at least And you heard the crowd boo. I mean, I think Penn State
the
fan base
crowd
had a lot
was
of crazy,
loud.
They weren't booing because they didn't convert the 2-point conversion. They were booing because we tried a 2-point conversion. I mean, we have a lot of crazy people in our fan base, but I think we have a pretty smart fan base. And I think 99% of the people in the stadium were like, in what universe do you go for 2 here? Yeah, I love that comment from the controller because that's exactly what he's going to say. That's exactly what he's going to say. The turnover, the Aller fumble was a big one. That was a swing. I think they limited Michigan to, it was 14-9. Michigan, that's when Michigan kicked the field goal. So that was pivotal because I think at that point we were still moving the ball fairly well. And I mean, Aller picked up a first down on that run and just somebody made a really nice play, just got their hand on the ball. But
yeah, I think that's one you kind of, I mean, it sucks, but I don't, that's not one I'm even going to, like, I'm not going to be upset about that. It's part of the game of football. Yeah, you should protect it a little more, but we've been talking that we need Aller to trust his feet and be confident with running it. And he was confident on that play. It was a good play from the defender. I think here's another comment that I'm sure you would, I think you actually have the other side of this. Why would you go for it on your own 30 there? I'm kind of 50-50 on it. I don't know where I lay on it. Obviously, now looking back on it with 2020, I think it was a horrible decision. But at the moment, I understood why we'd go for it. But I also understood Joel Klatt's point of saying, look, you got 2 timeouts. Your defense is playing really, really well. Try to punt them deep and see what happens. So obviously that was the touchdown to make it 24-9. But I kind of get going for it there. I still don't think it's the right decision, but compared to the 2-point conversion attempt in the first half and the late one, it's not even in the same ballpark as bad coaching decisions. So
I'll say I was okay with that. I think the only value you gain from punting is if you think your defense can score, and Michigan was never going to pass. So I think all you do with a punt there is Penn State. Instead of Penn State on 4th down from its own 30 with 4 minutes to go, you end up with Penn State probably back on its own 30 or somewhere in the general area because they probably punt it 40 yards or whatever. Michigan, best case scenario, you hold Michigan to a 3 and out. They probably punt it, and you're back at your 25 or your 30. Now this time there's only 2.5 minutes left, and you have no timeouts, and you have to drive the length of the field. So in my mind, you're driving from that spot on the field for a touchdown, or you're not. And you're either going to do it with 4 minutes left and a couple timeouts, or with a minute 30 left and no timeouts, or whatever it might be. They probably weren't going to do it under any scenario. So that's where, for me, I wouldn't have been mad if he punted, because I think, frankly, giving your defense the chance to get a fumble or something probably makes sense. Like, your defense there's maybe a better chance that your defense scores than your offense does. But it was sort of a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. I'm not gonna ding them too much for that one. And in reality, Michigan scoring on that very first play probably helped us, honestly.
Yeah,
because they probably are able, if they get like 2 first downs, they probably chew up the clock. Penn State uses all its timeouts to kick a field goal, and then it's instead of 24-9 with a lot of time left, it's probably 20-9 with like a minute left or something. And it's pretty much over at that point anyway. But
yeah, so I want to hit this comment again. Obviously, this is a Penn State podcast, but we love having you Michigan fans here. A lot of you guys joined us last year after the Michigan game. I mean, I don't think any of the three of us actually like hate Michigan the way we hate Ohio State or anything like that. So hopefully you beat Ohio State in a couple weeks. But I want to hit this comment by Tice. All clowns talking about sign stealing don't know football. Penn State knew the run was coming and couldn't stop that football. So this podcast has been on the record of saying no one gives a crap about this. The actual allegations against Harbaugh and the staff and anything, none of us really care. The problem is they broke the rules. So you gotta you get penalized for breaking the rules. That's how life works. Do we think it should be a rule? I couldn't care less. I think you should be allowed to live scout steal signs. That means you have to be a better coach and change your signs from game to game. That's my opinion on it. So Tice, I get what you're saying. Penn State knew the run was coming. Michigan still only averaged 4.9 yards per carry. I mean, yeah, that's good, but compared to last year, I think Penn State did a pretty good job of stopping the run. For Michigan to score 24 points, one of them on a 30-yard run right at the end of the possession change there. I don't know. I'm going to slightly say that I don't think Michigan's run offense was as good as you think it was, and I think if I was a Michigan fan, I would be a little concerned. Now, from our point of view, I think Penn State has that good of a defense that maybe Michigan should have some hope. College teams don't have time to change their signals every week. Bullcrap. That is an absolute lie. They practice 6 days a week. They have plenty of time.
These dudes aren't going to school. Let's
no. They're taking basket weaving 101. I mean, college football is a
Michigan huddle. Football was played with huddles for 100 years, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and to get back to the sign stealing thing, I'm totally on board with what you said. It's funny because it's Michigan. It doesn't really rankle me all that much. I think that the situation here is Michigan was so blatant about it, and whether it was just Stalions operating on his own, I don't know. I presume we'll find out. But like, you can't be that blatant and obvious about it and not expect to not get some sort of punishment where other teams doing it. Maybe that'll come out and maybe those teams will get punished. But like, I mean, you got to know your personnel. And like, this dude had a Michigan football manifesto where he was gaming out like the future of Michigan football. Like, he's standing on the sidelines telling your defensive coordinator things. You can't play for me, that's where it sucks. If Harbaugh actually didn't know, it sucks for him that he gets punished. But when you're the head coach, I'm not going to buy I didn't know what was going on card when like this dude's not like in the locker room somewhere, like outside unseen. He's standing next to your coordinators telling you what's going on. It's kind of hard to say I didn't know what was going on. But anyway, it didn't have any impact on the game. And I think Michigan
doesn't have any, and I think
they weren't 9-0 because of that. They were killing bad teams.
I
think
they're a really good team.
So this comment here, I think the due process argument is probably Michigan's best point.
Yeah,
I would also respectfully point out that we're not in a court of law, right? This is football. This isn't like, a criminal defendant or something where like Harbaugh's going to go to jail. I am on record now. I've been saying it, but I guess this first time anybody's hearing it. But I think it was complete Bush League. The timing of the announcement, I think it's absolute Bush League that they announced it. My whole thing was once we hit like Wednesday or Thursday, in my opinion, you cannot do anything to the Penn State game. I think if they wanted to come out tonight or tomorrow and punish him for Maryland and Ohio State or whatever, you got to give the team like the full week to prep. I just think it was Bush League the way they did it. And so I will defend Michigan on that. Even though it's kind of funny to imagine Harbaugh has to like sit in his hotel room and watch the game. But the Big Ten definitely see that they would say, well, we sent to Michigan what our plan was on like Tuesday or Wednesday, and we wanted to give Michigan like 48 hours to prepare a response to us so that we could consider that before we made our decision. So like they're going to say the way it worked out wasn't really our fault. But at the same time, that's why, again, I would go back to, I probably would have just punted on this week and told Michigan, we're going to make an announcement on like Sunday, and that will dictate what happens for the rest of the season.
anyways, I don't really want to talk about that because, again, I think we all don't care. Like, whatever. That doesn't affect. It's not has nothing to do with today's game. Other than, yeah, Harbaugh probably should have been on the sidelines, and that's, I mean, I kind of agree with that guy. So, anyways, okay, this is the last comment I'm going to hit, and then Zach and Jordan, if you're going to stay on, go for it. We have 250 people on right now, so obviously the people want to keep talking, but I genuinely have to go at 4. Enrique says the only team cheating is Penn State. They have been cheated by Franklin. Horrible play call, going for 2 so early in the game. Why? Go for 2 at 15. Why? Awful. And I'm a Buckeye. So, yeah, agree with you. I think that perfectly sums it up. So, Zach and Jordan, I'll leave it over to you guys. I'm going to tell you right now, we're going to lose to Rutgers. All right. Bye.
Just drops the grenade and leaves.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. I mean, I think Rutgers is actually a solid team. I'm actually interested to watch the Rutgers-Iowa game this afternoon because I think there's a chance Rutgers goes to Iowa City and wins. But the problem, to Devin's point, is if all these guys that came back, like Olu and others that probably could have tried to get drafted last year, the season's over based on like why you came back, right? So will they be up for the Rutgers game or will they be up for the Michigan State game? Who knows? Would you like to think we've got enough talent that we can win those games easily? I guess. I guess we'll find out. But yeah, to get back to Enrique's point, it just feels like at what point do you it's like a Twilight Zone episode is probably the best way I would describe it as far as being a Penn State fan under Franklin. It was fun in 2016. And then it was like 17. We're like, darn, we were right there. We probably were one of the best teams in the country in 2017. Blew out Michigan, lost to Ohio State by a hair. It feels like we're on the precipice of something. 2018, bit of a step back. 2019, good return to normalcy. Lost to Minnesota, probably should not have lost that game, but then COVID hits, and now it just feels like we're fully entrenched in this cycle of good but not good enough. And I don't care about the 10 wins, like 10-2. I care about who you beat. And if this was, back in the 90s or the 2000s or even the 2010s, when you had really good Michigan State program, you had a really good Wisconsin program, you had a really good Iowa program, you had, the random years where like Minnesota or Illinois or somebody would pop up. You had the opportunity in the Big Ten to get quality wins, right? And wins you could look back and say that's a really good win. That's a ranked team, or it's a road win against a tough team. The way the Big Ten has been lately, it's going to change next year, but it's just Ohio State and Michigan and a bunch of trash. And so you're going to have, if they beat Rutgers and Michigan State to finish the year 10-2, and maybe they win another New Year's Six bowl. And I don't want to sleep on the Utah win last year. That was a legit win and a legit bowl against a team I really like. I really like Utah. I'd take Kyle Whittingham in a heartbeat right now. But you're going to have perhaps a 2-year stretch where you look at 22-4, and what was the best regular season win between last year and this year? I'll throw that out to Joro if he's still with us. Is it at Auburn, at a bad Auburn team where we boat raced a bad SEC team? Is that our best regular season win? Was it this year in the whiteout against an Iowa team with a backup quarterback, its third string running back, its best tight end out, and like no offense, even if all those guys are healthy? What's our best regular season win in the last 2 years, Jordo?
I would probably say the Auburn game, but even that's not even that impressive.
Yeah, and
Auburn
they finished what? They
wasn't
finished
very
what?
good that year.
They're like 5-7 or 4-8 or something. Like that's so.
Yeah.
For me, the Franklin conundrum, I think the rubber meets the road a little bit more starting next year, because on one hand, for the foreseeable future, we will not have Ohio State and Michigan, at least for the next 5 years anyway. They haven't announced the schedules out farther than 5 years, but for the next 5 years, you won't have Ohio State and Michigan on the schedule at the same time. But you will have, instead of the normal crap that is the Big Ten, where like you pretty much can't lose to most of these teams unless you play truly awful. You're going to have Oregon, you're going to have USC, you're going to have Washington, even a UCLA. UCLA would be unquestionably the 4th best team in the league this year. So there will be more chances for Franklin to put up wins that I will actually care about. But perhaps just as importantly, there will be opportunities for more losses. Because I think what saves Franklin and all of the crowd of people that's happy with 10-2 is there's not enough teams on the schedule that could realistically beat us. So he just kind of like it's like his floor is really, really high. We're going to get 9 or 10 wins just because of the schedule. It's kind of like, for any of you that follow your local high school football scene, the local powerhouse in the regular season schedule, there might be 2 games, right? Maybe not even that. Some of the powerhouses, there's not even a single game on the regular season schedule, and they go 10-0, and it's like, who cares, right? Because we're Southern Columbia and we want to win the state title. And if you lose in the state semifinals, it's considered a massive underachievement. There's a bit of that going on for me with the last few years of the Big Ten, where it's just been, let's be honest, the Big Ten stinks. And I know we got a lot of Michigan folks in the chat, so this maybe won't be popular, but I wasn't super impressed by Michigan or Ohio State this year. And I know they're going to say I'm just a salty Penn State fan. I'm a realistic Penn State fan. I think we're not that good. I really don't think we're that good. I think our defense is very good. And I think they make a lot of big plays, but I also think the Manny Diaz style, we gave up a lot of 3rd and longs this year and last year. And even in this game, McCarthy had a couple runs on 3rd and long that were sort of the difference on a couple of those drives. And I'm not picking at the defense. I think the defense is by far the strength of the team, but we have a bad offense. We have let's just be honest, we have a bad offense. And so I feel like Michigan and Ohio State both just kind of like gummed us to death, and all credit to them. I thought the strategy without their head coach, I don't think Michigan made a mistake at all in terms of the operation of the game, in terms of those decisions. Do we punt? Do we go for it? Do we kick the field goal? Do we go for it on 4th? I think they made the right decision at every stage, and they knew they had the game in their grasp, and they just had to avoid screwing it up, really. And so credit to them, because I think a lot of coaching staffs find a way to screw it up. And I think we have one of those staffs, but I don't know. As I look at a year that I thought was kind of wide open in terms of the national title race, I don't know. I would not favor Michigan or Ohio State if they were to play Bama or Georgia today, honestly. And Oregon, I think Oregon might be the best team in the league in the country. Your thoughts, Jordan? On where specifically on where the top of the Big Ten fits into the national title scene?
Yeah, I feel like I've seen this before where we're kind of very critical on Ohio State, Michigan, and then specifically Ohio State. I mean, other than that 1 year versus Clemson, they just show up in big games. Like I feel like we were kind of talking about this last year a little bit with them, and then they went and almost beat Georgia in their college football playoff. So I don't know. I'm gonna have to go back and really rewatch, but I mean, Michigan ran the ball 23 straight times.
Yeah, they didn't throw in the second half.
Yeah, they put up a bunch of yards, but
it's like a high school game.
Yeah, well,
yeah, I don't want to sound too like I'm not suggesting,
to be honest.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting that the Ohio State Michigan winner will not compete for the national title. I think clearly now at this point, unless something ridiculous happens, like Ohio State loses to Minnesota or Michigan loses to Maryland, the winner of that game will go to Indianapolis and beat the absolute crap out of Iowa or Minnesota or Wisconsin or whoever. I mean, Nebraska, they lost to Maryland today, and they lost to, who did they lose to last week? They were right in the hunt. I mean, so one of those teams is going to the playoffs, and I think they're good enough to compete. I think both have strong defenses. I don't think Ohio State, you referenced them playing Georgia really tight last year. They don't have CJ Stroud. They don't have Marvin Harrison, they do have Marvin Harrison Jr., but they don't have CJ Stroud. And I just don't think McCord's going to get better enough in time to compete with those types of teams. Michigan, I think there's a lot more passing game capabilities that they have than what we saw today. But I don't know. A lot of the fans up there have been, at least from what I could tell, had been really kind of questioning the run game to this point in the season. And again, they didn't. I'm not here saying they had a bad running game today, but the volume numbers will say they dominated Penn State on the ground. And I don't think they did. I think they did what they needed to do on the ground and got the win because of it. But you take out a couple of those big chunk plays and, they average 4 yards per carry, which isn't bad. I'm not saying that's bad. I'm just saying if they were forced to be more diverse with their play calling, because the opponent has, like a Georgia's going to score, right? Georgia's not going to look like a Penn State offense. Bama's not going to look like a Penn State offense. Oregon's not going to look like a Penn State offense. I would be interested to see, how they play in a game where they're not in total control from the jump. And in reality, even though this score today looked a lot different than all of Michigan's other games from a game control standpoint. I would argue Michigan was they had as much control over this game as they've had all the other games this year. The score looked different, but the boa constrictor effect that everybody talks about was the same. They were in control. There were a few moments where I think Penn State had a chance to flip the script and basically swing the momentum and really eat into the control that Michigan had over the game, but it didn't happen. And so they never really lost control of the game. So maybe that's just me just trying to avoid getting destroyed in the comment section. I'm not saying Michigan's not good or not good enough to compete with the teams at the top. I guess part of it is we just hadn't seen them really be challenged all year. And today they were kind of challenged, but still really weren't, in that they were always in control. So I don't know, Jordan, anything else you have to say as far as your view of this game, your view of Franklin or Yurcich coming out of this game, where Penn State goes from here? May have lost him. Jordan, are you with us still?
Yeah, I can hear you right now. All right,
gotcha. I was just saying, any other thoughts?
Comments.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, let's just hit some comments quick if you want to lead that.
Sure. Yeah. Lex Rex says Penn State needs a new coach. Perhaps. Yurcich is trash. Yeah, I am, and I think I talked about this in maybe after the Ohio State game, but it's really interesting to me. If you think back to how we got Yurcich in 2020, the COVID year, that was the first year that James Franklin had gone out and gotten Kirk Shiraka, who I think is from York County. He was the offensive coordinator at Minnesota, actually, in 2019 when Penn State lost to Minnesota up there in a game that maybe kept us out of the playoffs. But anyway, they ran a really heavy RPO based offense. He comes over to Penn State, and if you remember the 2020 season, I know nobody wants to. Passing game was really bad, but they actually were pretty good on short yardage situations. And you had Will Levis, and so we had this very slow, methodical offense under Shiraka. At the end of the season, Yurcich comes available. I forget where he was at that time. It may have been Ohio State or Texas, but basically Franklin jettisons his offensive coordinator after 1 year, which seemed kind of odd in the moment because he's usually pretty loyal with his assistant coaches. Goes out and gets Yurcich on the pretense that basically, like, this is a guy that we couldn't afford to pass up. So he comes in with a lot of pressure in my mind, or at least the way I viewed it was, we need to elevate. Like, we need to take the next step on offense. And it seems like not only have we not taken the next step, I feel like we've actually regressed back to basically what the Kirk Shiraka offense looked like, which was decent run game, good at short, picking up small chunks and being methodical, short passing, and not very explosive in the pass game. So it's kind of like, for me, it's like a 4-year cycle where we made a move that was designed to elevate us, and it actually just kind of brought us back to square one. So I don't know. I expected more. Part of it is the personnel. I mean, Yurcich is coming from the Big 12, where you've got this wide open, go 4 wide, spread your receivers out wide. You've got good quarterbacks everywhere. You've got bad defenses everywhere. I think that's like at his heart or in his base level, that's the type of offense he wants to run. And we don't have the personnel for it. And I don't think in the Big Ten, even the bad teams in the Big Ten usually are able to play like competent defense. If you watch a lot of these Big 12 teams, it's like they're not even like trying to tackle. We got a comment here from Mark Leclerc. Michigan fan here. Why go for 2 in the first half? Why not kick the extra point to cut it to 8? I don't know if you just joined us. Thank you for joining us. I went on a huge rant about that earlier. I don't understand it. Franklin is one of those guys that likes to say the book, the analytics book says this, the analytics book says that. I don't care if you got Albert Einstein on the sideline or John Forbes Nash. Like, no. Under no circumstances do you chase the 2-point conversion early. Talk to any high school coach. They will tell you that. Yeah, so I don't want to revisit that because I already went on a big rant about that. But thank you, Mark, for tuning in. The controller is saying, "How do you ruin Singleton? Blah. What a disappointment this year is." Yeah, it's tough. I mean, you're talking Gatorade Player of the Year, 5-star. It seems like he's gotten slower. Like, I would be curious to know, and maybe I need to go back and watch some footage from last year. But I feel like he's put on some weight, and I think he's stronger, and I think he's finishing one of the problems with him last year was he didn't finish a lot of runs well. Allen was the guy who was carrying people and kind of always picking up the extra yard or two. And Singleton was one where he was always kind of looking to bounce it to the outside and get off to the races. This year, he's not doing that, and I think he's running hard. And I thought he ran really hard today, but he just doesn't have that explosiveness. And I think part of it, we've talked about the offensive line play, where I think the run game from the offensive line has been largely pretty good. They're getting a push at the point of attack. I don't think we have that elite offensive line that you see where you see the guards in the center getting onto the linebackers and driving the second level. I feel like we're good at that point of attack, but we're not getting second level blocks. And that's what you need to spring running backs, untouched into the second level. So I don't know. Part of me, I don't even want to speak this into existence, but it's hard to know the psyche of some of these guys. And you wonder if Singleton or Allen at the end of this year looks back and says, I'm sick of sharing carries. I'm the guy. I need to be the guy. I should be the guy. I want to be the guy somewhere. This offense is garbage. Do they look at the portal? I don't know. I hate to be, dramatic and maybe speak things into existence that aren't there, but I don't know, because you look back last year and Singleton averaged 6 yards a carry, and it wasn't a fluke, and he was getting chunk plays everywhere. And it wasn't just against bad teams. It was, especially at the end of the year, it's almost like they got stronger. So I don't know. Great question to whoever it was that asked that. D. Bungert asked, Aller he just might not be that good, regardless of the he's just young narrative. Yeah, it's quite possible. I mean, in today's day and age, as much football and as much like elite 7-on-7 and elite 11 camp and all the stuff as these guys do, the he's young narrative, I think it's overblown, especially at this point in the season. We're talking, 10 games into the season. And I thought, and I've been on record saying, I thought the staff actually handled it really well last year, where they got him in enough that he really wasn't a rookie coming into this year. I mean, he didn't take a lot of snaps last year, but he got game action, and I think every single game. So I basically treat Aller as like a second year guy, right? Because he's been around. He got in plenty of games last year. He wasn't like so green this year that yeah, I'm with you. The he's young narrative, I'm not going to buy it. I don't think he's the problem. I don't think he sucks. I think he's got limitations, and I've said all along, I'd much rather have the dual threat quarterback. I mean, even McCarthy, he's not like a true dual threat, but he's very athletic. And there were a number of plays on Michigan scoring drives where I think the credit goes to McCarthy being able to extend those drives on his feet. Specifically, I'm thinking about the one play where there was a huge hold on Johnny Dixon on a McCarthy run out to the left. Didn't get called, but McCarthy made a really good play, and he extended the drive on a 3rd and long. There was an earlier play in the first half where they basically ran like the single wing quarterback sweep to the right. I think it was like 3rd and 9 or 3rd and 10, and they picked it up, and he had a great run. There was another play on a Michigan touchdown drive. They were going left to right, where he rolled out right, and just Kalen King just got lost in space, and McCarthy put the okey doke on him, and it was one of those plays where it looked like he was bottled up, and he just got away. Real Dunbar here saying, Michigan fan here, y'all defense is a problem. Franklin will always hold you back. Yeah, that's you pretty much hit the nail on the head for this discussion. Thanks for tuning in. It's unfortunate. It feels like for the defense, like they deserve to win one of these Michigan or Ohio State games. I mean, coming into any season, frankly, if you tell me, hey, you're going to give up 20 to Ohio State and 24 to Michigan, I'd like to think we can get one of those. I'd like to think maybe we can get both of them. And in reality, did the defense really give up 20 to Ohio State and 24 to Michigan? You could argue not really. You could argue if there was any competent offense whatsoever, Michigan and Ohio State don't even get to those numbers. They got to them. They scored 20 points and they scored 24 points. So I'm not one of these woulda, coulda, shoulda guys, but it's hard to put a lot of that on the defense when they're out there all the time and the offense is going 3 and out. And I mean, there was a drive today where Michigan jumped off sides on 1st down. Penn State had a 1st and 5, and they ended up punting. That was the drive where Aller had the intentional grounding. Phenomenal Hebrew, great name. Nobody is scared of Penn State quarterbacks throwing the ball over their heads with mediocre James around. Yeah, thank you for tuning in. I don't know if you're just with us today or if you've been with us before, but we've been talking about that all season. Once teams have a book on you, they make you do the things, or they put you in a position where you have to do the things you're not good at. And I think the only way that you get out of that trap is by actually doing those things. And it's scary. It's challenging because there's a reason you're not good at them. But if you don't make them pay, or at least make them think twice about pushing the ball down the field, it's just hard to do anything else on the field because they're taking everything else away. I don't care if you're the 85 Bears. When you play defense, you're giving something up somewhere. You can't cover everything everywhere all at the same time. And clearly a lot of these teams are deciding, we don't think that they can beat us deep, and we don't think they can beat us over the middle. And that was discouraging for me. Is, the one area where I felt like, I don't want to say we had an advantage because I like Michigan's linebackers. They're good, but you'd like to see Tyler Warren, Theo Johnson, trying to get into the seams down the middle of the field and hit them. And we really didn't see any of that. So Matthew Fochese says tight ends needed used more as well, since the wide receivers can't get separation. I feel like that was a great segue. Thank you for that. I just mentioned, I feel like we didn't target Warren and Johnson enough. And I don't know, there were some plays where wide receivers were open and Allard didn't hit them. I'm thinking back to a key third down where I think it was Caden Saunders was going left to right and Allard threw it behind him, and could Saunders have caught it? Sure. He got crunched because of that. I don't know. There were other plays where Michigan pressure got home and Allard just kind of chucked the ball away because nobody's open. And so I'm reluctant to put the blame on any one thing. I think there's a lot of problems and a lot of folks that can share the blame. Raymond Stern says Franklin needs to recruit some receivers, even if they had Stickum, they would still be pathetic. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I feel like drops weren't really a huge problem today or this year. I just think the inability to get open, the inability to have guys that scare defenses is massive. I mean, you see it with the Marvin Harrisons of the world, and part of their success is they're so good, and part of their success is the other teams know they're so good, so they have to change the way they play defense, and it opens other things up. The controller, I'm going to throw up game blouses, more of the same. Hack and Aller. Yeah, I don't know. I don't want to revisit the Hackenberg era. And if that starts to become a meme, or if that starts to, become a reality, Aller has a lot of things and benefits that Hackenberg never had. So I'll just throw that out there. Matthew Fochese, I'll say it again. Allen needs to start over Singleton. Yeah, I mean, it was weird to me that Singleton started today, and he actually looked good early. So I don't want to throw him under the bus, but I think Allen's been the better back all year. I think it's been pretty obvious. I'd really like to see them try to get Singleton the ball in the passing game. I mean, that was one thing today. No swing passes, or maybe there was one. No screens. Michigan's front is really, really aggressive. You might want to try a screen every once in a while against them. I don't know. You got to get these guys the ball, and especially on a team where you don't really like your receivers. And I think, frankly, they know what they have and what they don't have at receiver. Where's the emphasis on trying to get Singleton and Allen the ball in space in the passing game? I think that's something you got to look at. Jack George, where's Tony Sacca? That predated my time, but I'll say this: I think Drew Aller looks like the quintessential Joe Paterno quarterback of like the 80s and 90s. Like, he's big, he can run a little bit. He's tall. He is inefficient. I don't know. He kind of reminds me of a lot of those, like McQuarrie and the Saccas and John Schaefer on Penn State's 86 national title team. I just think in today's day and age, there's not every team can have a JJ McCarthy, but I think a guy like that, you're taking that guy every day of the week and twice on Sundays, just because the ability to scramble, the ability to extend plays with your feet, the ability to pick up runs. You just, in today's day and age, and especially as much protection as the quarterbacks are given, you're going to pick up penalties just from running the ball and people hitting the quarterback late. Matthew Fochese, Drew isn't being developed right. Yeah, I think you can point to Yurcich and Franklin and say he's not progressing as well as you probably would have liked coming into the season. And again, part of the discussion is, and we've been having this discussion ad nauseum, is it Aller? Is it Yurcich? Is it the receivers? Is it the offensive line? Is it the lack of an explosive run game? The answer is probably yes. And then it's just who's the main culprit, or how do you allocate the blame? Probably because everybody gets a little bit of it. JMO 88. Well, I guess everybody can see that the Wolverines don't have to cheat to win, especially when every team in college football does the same thing. Thanks for tuning in. I don't think anybody thinks that Michigan had to cheat to win, other than the crazy Ohio State fanboys that you're probably fighting with on Facebook right now. That's the craziest part of this whole story, is that Michigan got caught cheating by going to Purdue games. Like, did you really have to scout Purdue? It's just, I don't know. I don't know why everybody's cheating is what the story has been from the Michigan folks, and they might be right. Ohio State and Rutgers have denied that they gave Purdue Michigan signals before last season's Big Ten title game. Somebody's lying. Maybe everybody's lying a little bit. I don't know, but it's like you didn't need Minnesota signals this year. You didn't need Purdue's. You didn't need Michigan State. Like, if that really was Stallions at the Central Michigan game dressed up as a Central Michigan fan so they could scout Michigan State, it's like you would have beat them 49-0 with them huddling on every play. It just seems like unnecessary to go to the degree that they went to. So it's all going to play itself out. There's no crocodile tears here from Penn State. Like, they beat us. Nobody's saying that. Yeah, I don't think the science had anything to do with it. And frankly, if you've been with us since we jumped on at the very beginning, I've said from the jump it was very Bush League how the Big Ten went about the timing of the suspension. I think reasonable people can debate whether or not the Big Ten should have acted preliminarily like it did. I think there's a reasonable debate there. I don't think that the timing of how they suspended him was right. Frankly, that's where I'm at. D. Bungert, did Michigan run the ball 30 straight times in fear of chop, or to prove that it doesn't matter if you know what's coming? Maybe a little bit of both, but also I think from a coaching standpoint, they realized Penn State can't hurt us unless we hurt ourselves. So why even risk putting it in the air? I think they like JJ. I think frankly, actually, from what I've seen this year, they have become more of a passing team than they probably have been at any point in the Harbaugh era. But the way this game was playing out, just run the ball. And if you punt, Penn State's offense will shoot itself in the foot and you'll get the ball back and then run it some more. And then Penn State's offense will shoot itself in the foot and you'll get the ball back. So I don't know. I don't think they were necessarily trying to prove anything, but I think they did have some respect for the pass rush. I think clearly if you looked at Penn State's defense, why risk, dropping back and passing more than you needed to when probably the best way Penn State scores is if Chop or Adisa Isaac or one of those guys gets a strip sack and maybe the defense picks up the ball, or maybe JJ throws an interception. One of his early drives, he threw a third down that hit Abdul Carter in the hands. And so I think, to their credit, Michigan staff realized we can probably play as vanilla as possible. Probably after the first quarter at that point, once they took the lead 7-3, we can play as vanilla as possible and win the game. So why risk anything else? That's kind of where I'm at. Just checking the comments here. Let's see what we got. 30 straight runs. Yeah, you don't see that anymore. I love it, frankly. Like, I'm an old school guy. I love it. Again, I think it's credit to Michigan staff, because I think there's a lot of coaches out there, and Franklin and Yursich are probably exactly like what I'm about to speak to, but they get too cute. They overthink it, right? Football's a simple game. And I don't think Michigan was dominating Penn State at the point of attack, but I think they were getting enough push that they knew, just run the ball. 3 plays, we'll probably pick up 7 or 8 yards. And if it's a short fourth down, maybe we go for it. We just punt it away. And Penn State's offense can't do anything. Boglin here. That's quite an image you got there. The entire offense is awkward. They're out of sync. They are one of the most odd offenses to watch in all of college football. The plays are extremely slow developing, especially the runs. Yeah, we talked about that earlier. I am so sick of seeing the shotgun side saddle running plays where the running back grabs the ball at a standstill. And, they didn't do a lot of the read option today, but they've run a lot of read option with Drew Allard, and he never keeps it. So what's the point? What are you doing, right? Even some of they're not quick in their bubble screens. There was a first one of the drives early, Penn State picked up 9 yards and first down. It was 2nd and 1, and they threw a bubble screen out to Malik Mega, which there's a name from left field. He has not seen the field much this year. And Allard threw it high and behind him, and so he had to spin and catch it, and then he got tackled behind the line of scrimmage, and then we got stuffed on an Allard QB draw, and we went from 2nd and 1 to punting. Birds fan, go Birds. Seemed like just an extra 4 quarters of the Ohio State game. Same thing, different day. Yeah, honestly, pretty true. I think the Penn State run game was better today. I think there was more of a chance to win today. I'll put it that way. I think Ohio State's beatable as well. I just think the way that game played out, we never unless Ohio State gave our defense a touchdown, we were not going to score a touchdown in the second half of that game until the very end, obviously, when they kind of were playing prevent defense. But today, you could have seen a result where Penn State could have won today. Obviously, it didn't happen. I'm not taking anything away from Michigan, but with a bit more passing game, you had enough in the running game, I think, today. I talked about it earlier, where during the week when you're envisioning, like, okay, if Penn State pulls off this upset, what does it look like? What needs to happen? I think they got the run game that they needed. They didn't get the rest of it. They didn't get the passing game. They didn't get a turnover. You probably factor in, to win this type of game, you need a turnover somewhere. They lost the turnover battle. That was only one, but that was big. Maybe a special teams play. I mean, you watch any of these big games where, even though Penn State was at home and even though they're a top 10 team, allegedly, when you see these types of upsets, generally there's either, a big defensive score or a big special teams play or a blocked kick, or you win the turnover battle. Something has to go your way. And to Michigan's credit, they were sound in special teams. They were sound defensively. They didn't give up any cheap plays. Both teams got hit with some penalties. I don't think there were a lot of penalty yardage between the two of them, but phenomenal Hebrew jumping in saying, if you're not going to fire mediocre James, you should at least fire Yursich. Yeah. Well, first off, they're not going to fire James Franklin. He's got like $800 million left on his contract or something crazy. I'm exaggerating, but the contract situation is such as that he's here for the foreseeable future. Yursich, maybe not so much. Greg B, I told a friend of mine the same thing an hour ago. We got outcoached by a team without a coach. Remarkable. Yeah. I don't know what to say. I mean, when Penn State scored late, the touchdown pass to Theo Johnson, and they cut to the sideline, and I saw James Franklin holding up the 2, I wanted to throw up because it's like I root for a team that has a coach that's this dumb. But he'll come out in the press conference and he'll say, I'm the dumb guy. He'll say, we're the dumb guy. That the book says you go for 2 there. Like he'll just turn it around and make it seem like everyone else is crazy and he's the smart guy in the room. And that's assuming the beat reporter.
Zach, he'll essentially gaslight you in the media.
Yeah. Well, and that's only if our local beat reporters actually have the balls to press him on it, which we'll see. Nobody likes David Jones from Penn Live, but I feel like he's one that would actually press him on that, because I think it's indefensible. I don't know. I've been talking for a while here, Jordo. If you're still with us, jump in.
Yeah, I'm still driving, so it's
gotcha. Well, so here we got a comment.
I'm trying to run the comments a little bit.
I like it. Well, I'm glad, because we got a lot of people tuned in, and that's awesome. And as painful as this game was, and as much as I hate losing, it's fun to talk about college football. So I want to stay with these folks. JMO88 said that fumble turned the game. You can see the look on the Penn State quarterback face. That was the game one turnover. The game's one turnover, I think, is what he meant. Yeah, I mean, Penn State scores late in the first half to go down 14-9 because, again, they didn't kick the extra point, but they get the ball to start the half. That's looking back. That's a great point by JMO. Penn State has the ball to start the half. That drive actually started out okay. I think they got a first down, and then Aller picks up another first down on the run, and he gets stripped and fumbles, and Michigan goes down and kicks that field goal and makes it 17-9, and that is when I think their stranglehold on the game became unavoidable. Like they went up 8, and it was never going to get cut shorter than that. Hindsight's, you never know, right? Does Penn State keep marching and score on that drive? I don't know. Maybe not. Probably not. But I think it's a different game if they come. Franklin, one thing he always talks about is the middle 8 minutes, the last 4 minutes of the first half and the first 4 minutes of the second half. So they score that touchdown late to get back in the game. They open the second half with the ball. If they're able to drive down there, even if they go down and kick a field goal and make it 14-12, it's maybe a different game. And all of a sudden, maybe Michigan has to open up a little bit and has to change the way they do things a little bit. But credit to Michigan, they forced that turnover at what was a pretty crucial time in the game. Anybody that's ever played NCAA or Madden knows how important it is to win those middle 8 minutes. You never want to be the guy that gives up a touchdown late in the first half and then kick off to your opponent to start the second half, because it can be such a big swing, potentially a 14-point swing. We got a comment here from Watch Rolex. How can Franklin have such a poor record against Ohio State and Michigan and not get fired? Good question. Take it up with the AD. Take it up with the fan base. I don't know. It's hard to judge. If you read the blogs, I think there's a majority of folks that are content and that are happy with him. And that's just my feel. I don't think it's a huge majority. I think it's pretty divided, but I just get the feel. Maybe Jordan, you can, if you're still with us, you can jump in. I think there's a small majority that is content and happy with him, and they're happy with, generally a clean program and a cool young guy that's kind of hip and fun, and he's got a nice young family, and he's a good face for the university, and on-field results maybe aren't the most important thing.
I think that's the biggest thing when they hired Franklin they were looking for. And the further on in his contract he goes, like I keep hearing this narrative. He's a great recruiter. Honestly, with Penn State's resources, I think he does a good job recruiting, but I don't think we're at that elite level of recruiting where he's irreplaceable. And that's my whole take is like, okay, he can be a great recruiter, but what is great? Is that top 5 in the country every year? Because that's not what we are in recruiting. And a lot of that isn't transitioning to the field either.
Yeah, and we're probably not going to be a top 5 recruiting team with whomever is the head coach, just because of the fact that teams in the North, even Ohio State, maybe Ohio State's the only team that isn't in the South that's going to be in the top 5 in recruiting. I tend to agree with you that I think as Penn State, you can generally recruit yourself. Like it shouldn't be that difficult for any head coach to come in and recruit at a pretty high standard. Might there be some drop off from generally Penn State's in like the top 10, top 15 as far as their recruiting every year. So a lot of folks would say, well, Franklin's teams are generally ranked just about where their on-field results are ranked just about where the recruiting ranks are. And there's some merit to that. But I think most head coaches would come in and this would be a top 15 or top 20 recruiting class every year type program, just because of resources, just because of name brand, especially as I think in the coming years, the Big Ten and the SEC are going to start to separate themselves from the rest of the conferences where it's kind of like the Big Two and the little everybody else. So the idea that like Franklin has some magic recruiting touch that we could never replace, I don't buy it. I just don't. I think he's a good recruiter. I think there's a lot of coaches that we could bring in that there might be a drop off, and his ability to connect is better than others. But I don't think it's some guarantee that we get somebody else and all of a sudden their recruiting takes a nosedive. And to Eli Hoff's point, like I want more than recruiting. Because if you look at Michigan, now again, Ohio State's clear. You look at the recruiting battles between Ohio State and Penn State, and look what they're ranked every year and where Penn State's ranked. Ohio State is on a different level. Michigan, I think a lot of people might be surprised to this. They're not. Michigan's not. If you look at year in, year out, Penn State and Michigan are pretty much dead even. So that tells you they're developing better, or their coaching is better, or their use of the portal is better.
They recruit a different type of player too. Like not all 4 and 5
they recruit football players. They recruit football players.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's a great point.
I know we've talked a long time about that, but maybe it's good to bring that back up. And I just also wanted to shout out to the 268 people who are watching this live.
Yeah,
staying
that's
with
awesome.
us and we'll answer
That's awesome.
as many comments as keep coming on.
Yeah,
here.
I'm struggling
if you
to.
can, make sure to like the video and give us a subscribe button too. It really helps us out, and we're pretty open about all the Big Ten teams. So if you're not a Penn State fan, like we cover everything. So I just wanted to shout that out before we keep scrolling down the comments here.
Yeah, absolutely. Tune in. We like to reveal our own top 25s every week, and kind of argue about who's right and where maybe the college football playoff committee goes wrong. We also do our pick'ems, and we try to take a look at games every week beyond Penn State and beyond the Big Ten that are interesting games. There's so many comments coming in; it's hard to keep up. Watch Rolex is saying PSU recruits players, Michigan develops players. I actually don't think Penn State has a problem with development. I just think Michigan recruits football players. Michigan recruits football players, they develop football players, and then they play football. And Penn State recruits athletes, they develop athletes, and then they try to play athlete on the field. And again, I don't think Michigan dominated Penn State at the point of attack, but you could see when Michigan went out and put their jumbo package in, they're saying, we're here to play football. with some big beef, and you guys don't have it, and we have it. And whether that's enough to get them past Georgia or Alabama, I don't know, because Georgia and Alabama have those guys too. But there's something refreshing about the fact that, Michigan, they recruit football players. Penn State recruits basketball players and track players, and then they try to say, we're going to develop you into football players. Bailey Wack is saying you'd think they would want a coach that can win big games instead of just recruiting players. I don't know. I mean, I don't think the program, I don't think the powers that be are all that daunted by the fact that we can't beat Ohio State and Michigan. I think there's a lot more that goes into being the head coach. And let's face it, in today's day and age, the head coach at a major college football program is the face of the entire university. That's just reality, right? If you look at enrollment at Alabama in the pre-Saban days and since Saban got there, enrollment is through the roof. There's something to be said for the head coach of the major college football program is the face of the university. And I think they like James Franklin as the face of that university. They don't care as much about on-field football results, but he's a great face for the university. Su Bong Yoon, do you know Brandon Short? Yep, Brandon Short, linebacker for Penn State back in the late 90s. Played with LeVar Arrington. I believe he's on the board of trustees. I'm not sure what the comment is geared towards, but yeah, we know Brandon Short a little bit. Watch Rolex. I'd like to see Penn State in a 12-game playoff, but sadly, I think your coach would still find a way to lose. Yeah, well, here's the reality. As much as we rail on him, it's a great point. But I do think in a 12-team playoff era, Penn State, our problem isn't our problem is just Ohio State and Michigan. I think if we got into a 12-team playoff and we played, Texas or Florida State or Washington, I think we got as good a chance. I think those were 50-50 games. We just can't beat Ohio State and Michigan. Now, again, if you're not good enough to make the 14 playoff, you're not good enough to win the Natty in a 12-team playoff. But I think the perspective is different once the playoff becomes 12. I think for most fans, making the 12-team playoff and winning a game in the first round here and there, that will sort of satisfy the fans' appetite. For me, it'll still be the same. Like, I don't care if you make the 12-team playoff. There's only a couple teams every year that are good enough to win a national title. So there's going to be a lot of years where you see like a 5 seed just destroy a 12 or something where there's teams, and that's my concern. And I don't want to go off on a tangent here on the playoff, but like the beauty for me with college football is that there's no other sport where the regular season is actually playoff games. And let's be honest, this was a playoff game today, right? Penn State wins that game. They move on to the next round of like staying alive, and maybe they can make the 14 playoff. Michigan loses this game. All of a sudden, they're now in like a single elimination game with Ohio State. And I worry a little bit about the 12-team playoff taking away from the importance of every single game, right? That's the beauty of college football. Even in the 4-team, you can't lose. Like, you can maybe lose one, but you don't know when you lose that game if you can afford to lose it or not. Like, maybe you'll be okay with that loss, but you won't know until the end of the season. And so the fact that every game from week 1 on feels like a playoff game is something that I think no other sport replicates. And I'm worried that when it goes to 12, we're going to lose a little bit of that. But it's just the way the world. It's just going to keep growing. I mean, we had an 83-win Diamondbacks team in the World Series this year. It's just playoffs are getting too big in every sport, but it's all about revenue. So. Boglin here is saying Aller has tell. I think he's saying Aller has tells. That might be. It certainly might be. I think he just gets rattled, and his footwork really drops off. Jonathan Boris says it's not just skill players for Michigan. Michigan has put a huge focus on O-line and D-line, and that interior does make a difference. Yeah, I'm with you. I don't know if you're arguing with me or what, but I don't think the skill players mattered at all today for Michigan. I mean, I think Roman Wilson's a really good receiver. I think Johnson's a good one as well. They didn't play a role in the game. The tight ends, I think Loveland's a good player. That pass interference call on Kalen King on A.J. Barner was absolute garbage. King turns around, the ball's coming right to him. If you watch that play back, Barner literally tackles him. But anyway, no, I don't think the skill players – I don't think there was a huge difference amongst the skill players. And I don't think, again, that Michigan really dominated Penn State up front on either side of the ball. But they were just a little bit better, and that was the difference. And I think that's what I was saying a few minutes ago about how Michigan recruits football players and they develop football players and they mold them into guards and tackles and centers and tight ends. And they can go to their jumbo package and know that the other team, they can't dip into their reserves and put something similar out there to match what we have. And they're just playing to their strengths. And that's good coaching. Sometimes coaching is simple, right? Just do the simple things, do the things that you're good at and make the other team stop you. I don't know. It seems dumb and stupid to say that and give anybody credit for like doing the simple things, but I've watched a coach go for 2 when he's down 9. So I don't know. Brian Rhodes is saying fire Franklin. He's a pathetic head coach. Yeah, he's not getting fired. Let's just be real. We're talking probably 5 years out before it's even a reality. I believe he's in year 3 of the 10-year extension, and he's guaranteed, I think, $8 or $9 million a year, and it's guaranteed. The whole thing's guaranteed. It's not incentive laden. It's probably the worst contract in the history of all contracts. Mark Majowski, is Maryland pretty much shut down after the 51-15 route? They beat Nebraska today. They went out to Nebraska and beat a Nebraska team who was right in the midst of a fight for the West title. So I don't know. I think there's just such a big drop off between Ohio State, Michigan, a little bit of a drop off, then Penn State, then a massive drop off, Iowa, and then like a big drop off to everybody else. It's a mess. Conan is saying they need a new strength coach. Watch them against Ohio State and Michigan. Physically, they don't size up. Well, Conan, I don't know if you are Conan the Barbarian, but maybe you could sign up for that. I think with Michigan, there's truth to what you're saying. I think Michigan out physicals us. But again, today I didn't really feel like they dominated us. The runs, we pretty much bottled up Corum and Edwards, other than a few plays where they popped us. And in those plays, it wasn't just pancake blocks. It was largely on a lot of them. It was our defensive ends getting way too far upfield. We were not setting the edge well. They did. I'm surprised Michigan didn't try to get outside more often because we were not great at setting the edge. I feel like when they ran up the middle, again, they were getting decent yardage. They were getting good plays, but they weren't popping anything big. It was really when they went outside or kind of off tackle that there was a few times where we just did not set the edge. Dom DeLuca got washed on a play. Chop jumped into the wrong hole on a play, and that was all it took. Watch Rolex is saying great example. Aller's a great example, 5-star, but hasn't developed, or maybe is kept limited. I think is what he's trying to say. Yeah, I don't know. We don't know. What we always say on this podcast is we're not in the locker room. We're not on the practice field. I think Aller has the physical attributes. I think he's shown it definitely last week against Maryland. I also think there's limitations with the personnel in the offense. And that gets back to the question about if we're so great at recruiting, how do you ever come up with a roster where you have no receivers? You just don't have a single wide receiver that anybody is scared of. I mean, Condre Lambert-Smith has been our number one. I don't want to rag on him too hard, but like, where were you today? Where was he? Right. So part of me says, yeah, I clearly see the shortcomings with Aller, and I'm not going to let him off the hook. But at the same time, it's like, do we have enough weaponry on offense that it even matters? Like if we had another year of Sean Clifford, would anything look different? Or is part of the story losing Parker Washington, Mitchell Tinsley, and Brenton Strange was actually a really big deal, and not being able to replace them is more of a deal than I think people realize. Dante Cephas had a great game against Maryland last week, but didn't do a whole lot today. He's a guy coming into the season. You knew the portal additions were going to have to help us. I don't even know if Malik McClain saw the field today. He's been a complete nothing burger. Cephas has not been as advertised. We had to burn a timeout in the second half on that 4th down at midfield that we ended up punting. So we wasted a timeout when we should have just taken a delay of game and punted. But I think the problem there was Cephas didn't know the play call because Aller was trying to get him into motion, and then they ended up burning a timeout. Justin Wise says Penn State has talent. I don't understand how they struggle so badly on offense. You're in the right place, man, because that's where we're all at. Mark Majowski, any Fire Franklin people need to look at Nebraska and other catastrophic throwaway, good or very good 11-2 decisions. Yeah, I'm totally cognizant of that. My concern isn't that I'm not looking at that. My concern is that there's a Nebraska example and then there's a Georgia example. And there's probably more Nebraska situations than there is Georgia. But the question for me isn't Fire Franklin. It's what do you expect? What do you want and what do you expect from Penn State? Because I think if you have a rational thought process and your belief is our ceiling is higher than where Franklin has gotten us. And you run through that analysis and you make an informed decision, and your belief is we can be Georgia. Our ceiling goes higher. We can be Georgia. Then if you pull the trigger, I'm okay with it, right? He's obviously not getting fired. Like I just said, it's not happening, but 5 years from now or whatever, maybe. And I think if you run the computations and your belief is this program has a higher ceiling than he's delivered on, you pull the trigger. Because to my mind, in this era of college football, what's the difference between Penn State and Nebraska? Honestly. Now, would I rather go 10-2 than 6-6 or 5-7 or whatever Nebraska does every year? Yeah. But at the end of the day, we're not in the national title hunt, and they're not either. And we're kind of in the same boat. That's the reality. Are we closer than they are? Sure. So if you run that analysis and your belief is that that the risk outweighs the benefit, and that just sticking with Franklin and continuing to bang our head against the wall and maybe one day we'll push through, I can understand that too. I just think you've got to be cleary-eyed about what your expectations are. And I think if you're of the belief that Franklin's the best we can do and that we shouldn't expect more than 10-2, that's just a sad way to look at things. But if that's how you see it, I understand it. I mean, I think the Big Ten's only going to get harder. Again, we've talked about that. It's only going to get harder. James Gold, any not fire Franklin people need to look at Georgia. Post Rick, yep, and we just talked about that. So there's two sides to every coin, and in life, every decision has risk, right? For me, it's a risk reward benefit. PSU Jim, congrats to Michigan. I kind of wish Franklin had been penalized instead of Harbaugh. Why is PSU going for 2 on either occasion? You cannot go for it on your own 30-yard line. We talked about all of those. I'm guessing you probably weren't with us. I'm 100% with you on the 2-point conversions. There's absolutely no defense for either one of those, especially the one at the end. Going for it on your 30, I was actually okay with that, because at the end of the day, we punt the ball away. We maybe don't get it back, and even if we do get it back, we're probably at our 30 or maybe even worse with less time on the clock, and we still have to drive the length of the field. So I don't know. We were going to have to drive the length of the field to get that touchdown either way. Training wheels have to be taken off for this offense. I'm wondering if they are off and we just can't ride the bike. We're just not good at riding the bicycle. I don't know. The training wheels, I think early in the season, it was fair to say that we're holding stuff back, maybe for Ohio State, or we're just trying to keep it simple. We want to make it easier for the quarterback, but we're in game 10. So like, I don't know that the training wheels are still on. I think that they're off and the bike's falling over. We got Thonati M, Fire Franklin. We've talked about that. Eric, man, you guys are giving me some tough names here. Eric Mewson. Actually, Franklin is to PSU as to what Tony P is to the Big Ten. I'm assuming Tony Petiti. I'm not really sure what we're going for there. Bailey Wack. Franklin has shown time and time again he can turn elite talent into just a good product. Yeah, it gets back to the discussion that we kind of had throughout here, that is it elite talent? I mean, part of the thing too is like, you can only put so much stock in the recruiting data. You've got to go out and scout players. And I think that's where Michigan has done a really good job, is like they go out and especially in the portal too. I think they've got 2 starting offensive linemen that came from, I believe, Arizona State and Stanford. And you can't just rely on stars. How many stars does this guy have, or what's his score at 24/7? You got to find football players. You got to find guys that fit your program. And I think Franklin's been, on the whole, good at that. I'm not saying he's bad at that. I think the problem is we're talking about the high end of college football, so the margin for error is really, really small. I think he's been good at it at certain positions. I think he's been really good at it at certain positions. I think over his years, we've always had a good pass rush. We've had good defensive ends. I think he's good at finding those long, athletic, wiry guys that, you pack some muscle on and they keep that athleticism and they get after the passer. I think he's had that. I think maybe defensive tackle, not so much. We haven't found those guys that Michigan had today, Grant and Mason Graham, those freaking behemoth 320-pound guys that can move like crazy. Cornerback, he's put a lot of secondary guys into the NFL. What's weird about this year is receiver. There's been a lot of good receivers that have come through Penn State during the Franklin era, and this year just doesn't have it. Dan Wyben saying that was pathetic. The Diamondbacks. Yeah, well, you're talking to a Phillies fan, so yeah, it was very pathetic. Not only that the Phillies lost, but that they left an 83-win team getting the World Series. Just crazy. Pelcold, we just lost that one there. Jordan might be hopping on. Got anything for me, Jordan?
No, not really. Just good stuff about the like you were saying, athletes versus football players. It's not that I don't think Franklin hasn't recruited players who are good at football. Like, I don't know if some people in the comments are confused by what we're saying, but it's like we go after these lower level 4 and 5 stars that we have a chance of getting that aren't, already sculpted football players like the Alabamas, Georgias, Ohio States are getting. So there's like more to kind of mold them into what we need. I think that's why we're seeing such a gap at the wide receiver position, is because these athletes we are getting, they're playing, both ways in high school, and then we're getting them in like, okay, you're only going to be a wide receiver now, and you're going to be playing against like way better competition. And I think there's just, I don't know if it's coaching or what, but there's just a gap that is inherently obvious there.
Yeah, and I think you see that even like on Penn State's roster. I think you see that with a guy like Dom DeLuca. Like, I bet he didn't have any stars when he was probably I think he was a walk-on when he started, and he had a couple nice plays. He was out of position on Corum's 44-yard run, but he had a couple nice plays. And like, that guy's just a football player. And he played quarterback and won a state title at Wyoming area. And I don't know, that's just an example where like you can't get too caught up in the recruiting stars and the recruiting data. You got to find football players. And there's plenty of guys out there too that are really good that aren't a good fit for a particular program or a particular style of play. And they might be a great fit over here at this other place. And so it's not just about finding talent. It's about knowing who you are as a program and what you want to do and what you need, who you need. And I think Michigan, again, a lot of folks might say, well, they've only, it's nice that they've just started winning again after that it times up with the cheating scandal. But I think part of it is Michigan under Harbaugh, they've known who they are, right? And so they're recruiting year after year after year after year. He's finally got a team, and I think the quarterback position has really helped as well, where they know who they are on both sides of the ball, and they've got that, whatever you want to call it, synergy or momentum, where the team, they know who they are and they know the way they want to play and they know their style of play, and there's conviction and there's belief. And Penn State, at least on the offensive side of the ball, somebody mentioned earlier about how awkward it is. Like, who are we? What are we on offense? What's our MO on offense? And I think if you ask Mike Yursich that, or James Franklin, or Drew Aller, like, I don't know. We're just trying stuff to see what works, right? We're not imposing our will. We're not going into a game knowing this is what we do really well, and we're gonna bat people over the head with that. And then we're also going to sprinkle in these wrinkles off of that. We always feel like we're like a boxer early in a boxing match where you're just throwing jabs, like trying to assess the defense, and then later in the game you figure some things out. It seems like we're always just kind of throwing jabs, like trying to figure out what's going on. I don't know. I'm not a boxer, but maybe a poor analogy there. Mitchell Harris, sweet 2-point play there at the end. WTF? Yeah, we talked about that. Please don't make me go through that again. Franklin's an idiot. There's no defense of that. PSU Jim, feel really bad for Penn State's defense. Absolutely. I mean, I said it earlier, gave up 20 points to Ohio State, gave up 24 points to Michigan. And frankly, I think you can make an argument that the only reason those numbers got that high is because PSU's offense is so incompetent. It just feels like those guys deserve to win one of those games. If the offense does anything, they can maybe pull out one of those games. Cost 22 us says Franklin isn't going anywhere. You're absolutely right. The contract situation, it's hardly worth us wasting our time talking about it. But of course, as fans, that's what we do. Bailey Wack, at what point during that 30 run play stretch did Franklin realize they might run the ball? I think we had more first downs than they did. So I don't think the situation was like we couldn't stop the run. I mean, they got some first downs, and all they really needed to do was get like a first down or two every drive and then punt and make Penn State go 70 or 80 yards. It was never going to happen. So again, credit to Michigan. I'm not giving Michigan as much credit perhaps as some of their fans would like, but I am giving them credit in that they assessed the situation perfectly, and their coaching staff put the team in a position to just do the simple things and you win the game. So I give them all the credit in the world for that. Mike Middleton here, as a Michigan fan, your QB is a year or two away from being somewhat phenomenal in time. I appreciate that. Thank you for being gracious in victory. It's not easy for folks to do. I I'm not ready to give up on Aller. I think there's a lot of talent there. I think just the combination of the system that he's in and the personnel that we have at the moment is just not right. And hopefully it gets right. Kyler Kill, Michigan is 100% a national title team. They are better than anyone, but Penn State does have a real defense. I agree with that. I agree with that part of it. Better in my mind than Ohio State or anyone else they'll face. That D is for real. I think Penn State's defense is as good as anybody's. I agree with that. I just think Michigan and Ohio State both. And again, I'm going to be told I'm just a salty Penn State fan because we lost, but you can't imagine a more incompetent offense in these two games that we've seen from Penn State, and yet they were hanging around with both Ohio State and Michigan such where if there was just one fluky special teams or defensive touchdown, they maybe win the game. And I just feel like if you're Michigan, I don't know. Georgia and Alabama and Oregon are going to be a lot tougher. Mr. Thomas, 32 straight running plays, and Penn State couldn't stop it. Again, they largely did, but anyway, moving on. Yeah, that going for 2 early was stupid. Franklin always makes bad decisions in big games. Yep. We've kind of been over that. Cost 22 US is saying, you guys have tremendous insight. Seriously, better than some of the pros. Please keep the podcast going. It will blow up. Well, I appreciate that, especially since today I'm doing all the talking. So I think what you mean there is that I have all the awesome insights. So no, we're just 3 guys. I'm literally sitting out here on my porch, and it's actually starting to get cold. But we love Penn State football. We like the Big Ten generally. We love the whole sport of college football. I think it shows. I think like here's a good example on that point. Joel Klatt. I love Joel Klatt, but he's such a homer, and I don't know these guys. Gus Johnson's horrible. I mean, let us know in the comments if you like Gus Johnson. I love Gus Johnson in basketball games. I can't stand him with football games. He's so fake and corporate. And Klatt's a lot better in his podcast because he actually will say what he thinks. But like it just seems like when he's on TV, he's so corporate, and he never questions the officials. And like he didn't. How did he not question Franklin going for 2 there at the end of the game? Joel Klatt played quarterback at a high level. I know he played at Colorado. He maybe had a cup of coffee in the NFL. He played minor league baseball. Like in that situation, you need to call out that coach for making an absolute bonehead decision. Tice Summerall saying, you media people, whoa, bro. I don't know if you can tell or not, but like I'm just a guy sitting on my porch. So I'm not media people, but you know nothing about football. I think I know something about football, but maybe I don't. But I'm definitely not a media people. If you think sign stealing is a reason Michigan is good, Michigan had the deck stacked against them. Number one, nobody's saying that. And I think the only people that are saying that are like the salty Buckeye fans that you're probably fighting on Facebook with. Michigan had the deck stacked against them. No, they didn't. Like, let's be real. The head coach not being on the field for a game isn't the end of the world. Frankly, I think if you're a Penn State fan, you're probably wishing that the penalty had been that Franklin couldn't be on the field. Your coordinators are good. I think you have really good, sound offensive and defensive coordinators. And the nice thing for Michigan is you already had 3 games this year where Harbaugh was not on the field. So you're already ready for this. Your coordinators know how to. I think Sharon Moore was like the head coach today, so they're prepared for that. I think oddly enough, because of Harbaugh's multiple suspensions, like nobody in the country is better prepared to handle that than Michigan. Mr. Kennedy. Saying, did you see Corum's face after the game? Your defense got away with face masks almost every play. Okay, cool, whatever. You guys got away with the block in the back on a punt return right after the previous punt where Penn State was called for a hold when their guy was thrown into the Michigan person. Chris Reisner, Oregon is really good. I agree. I think Oregon might be as good as anybody in the country. Bo Nix is playing really, really well. Never satisfied. Great name. Gus is terrible. Yeah, I don't know. I can't stand him anymore. I really like him in basketball. I think he's better in basketball where the game is free flowing and he's reacting authentically and organically. Taterology, great name. As a Chicago Bears fan, Penn State's offense triggers my John Shoop PTSD. Yeah, I can't imagine being a Bears fan and a Penn State fan. Gus is a company man 100%. Yeah, I don't know. I think he's just sort of just corporate and boring. And in football, it's hard. His authenticism that he has, I think, in basketball can't really shine in football because there's so much downtime. To Rodden says because it's Fox. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe. I mean, I'm happy that we're away from all these ESPN games, but I don't know. I really like NBC, and I'm not just saying that because Todd Blackledge is the main primetime guy for NBC, but I really like the Todd Blackledge, and I'm trying to think who, I think it's Ian Eagle's son. That team is really, really good. And Penn State had it was the West Virginia game where they had the NBC primetime game, and that whole production was really good. Bailey Wack says, I think when it comes to Klatt and Gus, it's probably mostly coming down to Fox being terrible. How many commercials did we have to witness this game? Well, let me answer that for you. The reason we had to watch all those commercials is because of Michigan running the ball 8,000 times. So the commercial, they knew they had to run these extra commercials because the game's going to end too soon. That game could have been over at like 2:30. Never satisfied says Harbaugh doesn't call plays. Yeah, I don't think most head coaches do. I just think that the head coach situation is not being on the sideline is largely overblown, other than those crucial moments when, are we going for it? Are we calling, calling a fourth down, or what are we doing? Missing your head coach is a massive disadvantage. You hack. Okay. All right. I disagree, but whatever. Courtney Fowler, PSU needs a new offensive line coach. Yeah, and that's another thing where, like I said with the offensive coordinators, where we go through 4 or 5 offensive coordinators, but there's still this staple base offense that's the same. We've been through a bunch of offensive line coordinators. We've been through multiple years of recruiting cycles at offensive line. And what's the one constant? James Franklin. So I don't know. Change the offensive line coach if you want, but are you going to expect anything different? And I will say, let me back up. I will say, I don't think the offensive line played poorly today. So I'm not really pointing the finger at the offensive line. Sta is saying, how close do you think we are to seeing a new offensive coordinator to bring a new style or some sense to Happy Valley? I don't know. I could easily see Franklin and Yurcich parting ways at the end of this season. But as I just said, I don't know. I don't know if it matters. It's still his offense. It's still, you go back through Moorhead, John Donovan, Joe Moorhead, Ricky Ron, Kirk Chiraka, Mike Yurcich. There's a lot of similarities. The absolute refusal to go under center and run out of the I form, the complete disdain for the idea of a fullback. That's all Franklin. The insistence on using read option, whether or not you have a quarterback that is going to actually keep the ball and run, it's all been there. Those things have been consistent throughout. So part of me wonders, to your question, Sta, so we get a new offensive coordinator, but did we actually get a new style? Did we actually get some sense in Happy Valley? I don't know. I don't know if that'll change it or not. Let's see what else we got. Courtney Fowler says, PSU Jim, 1 more year, and then Penn State is a lock for the playoffs. I bet that will make things better. That's the question. And we talked about this a little earlier. Will it make things better? Like, losing in the first round of the 12-team playoffs, is that any different than Penn State going 10-2, making a New Year's Six Bowl and beating Utah or beating Ole Miss this year in the Peach Bowl or something? Is it different? I don't know. The only difference is the playoff got bigger, but are we still as far away from winning a national title as we are right now? I don't think it's different. I think the playoffs just gets bigger. Let's see what we got. Time to focus on wrestling. Yeah. Penn State basketball is 2-0. Got a decent win last night over Lehigh. A little too close for comfort, but hopefully you're following the basketball program, although I know most of you probably are not. Brave Freedom is saying Harbaugh was at the stadium. They had an ESPN camera person there with pictures of Harbaugh. He had a camera, was wearing red and gray, and was in drag. Yeah, I'm guessing that was not him. I'm assuming he was sitting in his hotel room at the Penn Stater watching the game, probably chewing his fingernails off. Jonathan Blackman, Franklin is one of the worst coaches in the big. Yeah, I don't know. I'd like to argue with you, but I don't have the energy to argue with you, and I don't know that you're wrong. So, Mike Middleton, PSU fans, your offense is built to run. Do you need a receiver or two? I think so. But let your QB develop. Your defense is elite. It seems like the program is developing nicely. It's just not here yet. I think you're mostly right there. I think you're mostly right. I will say there's a lot off that defense that's going to the NFL next year. And I like our ability to replenish because we've got some depth, but it's hard to just say, okay, we're going to lose Chop and Adese Isaac and we'll just next guy's up, right? Then Dennis Sutton's been a good piece. I think he can fill one of those, but there's probably going to be a drop off at defensive end. Curtis Jacobs is probably gone. He's a really good player. Kalen King, Daquan Hardy, and Johnny Dixon are possibly all gone. So we're probably going to lose all 3 cornerbacks. I don't know. I think the defense will be good next year, but I think it's maybe foolish to think that we won't have some level of drop off. Huge Ass says, need to figure out a way to get Franklin suspended for some games. He's the worst. Yeah, I don't know if we need to like concoct a scandal or something, but having been through a major scandal at Penn State, maybe it's better that we don't do that. Let's see what else we got. Georgia is going to win the third year in a row, says Larry Sheet. I don't know. They might. They very well might. I mean, I think it's pretty clear that there's only a handful of teams. What I thought was wide open at the beginning of the year, I think is starting to take shape. I don't buy Washington anymore. I loved Washington. I don't buy them anymore. I don't buy Florida State. I really think Georgia, as much as I hate to say it, Alabama is absolutely in the hunt. Georgia, Bama, Michigan, Oregon. I like Michigan more than Ohio State. Marvin Harrison, I think, gives them a chance, but I think it's really Georgia, Bama, Michigan, Oregon. Maybe not necessarily in that order, but I think those are the 4 teams that can win a title. Texas might make the playoff. I just think they're inconsistent. With Ewers back, they're definitely in better shape. Florida State's probably going to be, of all the teams, frankly, I think Florida State has the most likely playoff berth. I think their path is the easiest. I think Michigan and Ohio State, only one of them gets it, and one of them is going to lose in the upcoming game between the two of them. Oregon, Washington plays Utah tonight. I don't know. There's no guarantee anybody from the Pac-12 makes it, and it's not a guarantee who will make it from that conference. SEC, Georgia, and Bama could kind of play each other off. Florida State's the one where they just got to take care of business against lesser competition. They're going to play Louisville in the ACC title game. They probably have the easiest path, but I don't really buy them as a national contender. Mark Franklin, any relation? Says Franklin is Mark Richt, literally circa Georgia. That's what we don't know. And we kind of been saying that over and over again, where we don't know. I think both sides of the Fire Franklin camp need to have some respect for the other side of the camp, because I think the folks that are just saying, we're just going to be Nebraska. You don't know that. You don't know that. Nebraska has a lot of disadvantages, namely in the recruiting world, that Penn State won't have, regardless of who the coach is. Excuse me. But also the folks that are saying, we're just Georgia waiting for Kirby Smart. You also don't know that, right? You don't know that the next guy you hire is going to be Kirby Smart. You just don't. And frankly, even a good example is looking at Kirby Smart off the Saban tree. There's been a lot of coaches that have come off the Saban coaching tree that, Tennessee hires Jeremy Pruitt. Boy, that's Nick Saban's defensive coordinator. This is going to work out. It didn't work out, right? So there's no guarantees in life. Eric Weilage says Franklin coached like he was praying to keep it close to the fourth quarter, then blow it like he always does. Yeah, that for me, that the idea of like playing to keep it close, that's why I'm comfortable taking risks in a game where you're the underdog like this. And maybe the bow package, maybe just trying some different things. I'm okay with that. What I'm not okay with is the 2-point conversion stuff, because that's not informed risk taking. That's like mathematical stupidity. So I don't know. I did think when he went for it on fourth down, I pretty much was on the same page with him. My only gripe is the first drive when they kicked the field goal to go up 3-0. It just felt like you need first and goal from the 4. You need to run 4 plays, get 4 yards. And if you can't, you're not going to win the game. It's that simple. Go up 7-0 there. It's a whole different game. It felt like you're probably not going to get back inside the 10-yard line. And I don't think we did, other than that last drive where we scored at the very end when it was kind of like garbage time. Just feels like there are moments in a game, and sometimes they happen in the first quarter. Those moments that decide the game, they don't always happen in the last play. Coach Devin's not here with us, but he's a basketball coach, and that's a great example where everybody looks at the last second shot that you miss, or the guy that misses the free throw at the end, or turns the ball over, and that was it. That was the game. There's like 70 possessions before that where something crucial might have happened, and every moment isn't equal, and they don't always happen at the back end of games. See what else we got here. What are some predictions for next year? Go ahead, Jordan.
Yeah, I was gonna say we could start to like wrap it up here. Just go over a few more comments. I know, I'm sure people are just gonna keep flooding the comments nonstop.
Yeah.
So we're already at an hour 45. And shout out to everybody who's still watching. We're still up to almost 260 viewers. So make sure to give us a subscribe. It costs you nothing to subscribe to us. Like I said, we cover all the Big Ten, not just Penn State. We do weekly predictions, that kind of thing. So we usually film on Tuesdays and usually another time before the Saturday. And then obviously we do this instant reaction every Penn State game. But shout out to all the people watching. So
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's awesome, and a lot of good comments coming in. So I've just kind of been running with it. I'll hit a few here at the end, and then I think we'll wrap it up. But you can't say Franklin. Sta is saying you can't say Franklin is the worst coach in the Big Ten, but he is definitely the worst coach at a top program. And it's hard knowing there could be some better fits out there. Contract situation sucks. I agree that the situation sucks. I don't know who's out there. My whole thing is I'm okay with the idea of the fire Franklin folks, but you need to tell me who we're getting, and it's got to be a realistic name, and it can't be like Urban Meyer, right? So that's the problem. Is like there's only a few sure things in the college football world, and whether you can actually get them to come here is a different story. Derek says, I thought I was the only one who is confused as to why they don't go under center and run play action. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm just some like old school hack, but I don't understand why, and Franklin, he's tried to explain it. Like you have to be in shotgun because you can always do anything from shotgun. You can run, you can draw, you can pass, you can run speed option. Well, you can pretty much do anything you want from under center as well. So I just think it's ridiculous. And I think the value of going under center some is number one. I value a variable offense where you run as many different things as you can and force the defense to account for that. But also I-form, get the running back running with a full head of steam. There's so much value in that for me, especially with Singleton, a guy who I think is being not appropriately utilized. See what else we got. Phenomenal Hebrew says, we do know he's Mark Rick. Y'all love being, where'd it go here? Says, y'all love being mediocre Iowa Hawkeyes in Happy Valley. I don't know. Maybe he's Mark Rick. Maybe he's not. Maybe we'll find out, but it's not going to happen soon. Bob Whitebread. Why can't Penn State beat Michigan or Ohio State? Man, I wish I knew that. What else we got here? Michigan wins Natty, leaves for the SEC. Michigan's not leaving the Big Ten. That was just saber rattling. Somebody says, y'all still here? You're not embarrassed enough to sign off? It's just a game, dude. Like, it's just a game. It's not life or death. Let's see here. John Collins, number 9, is better suited to run the spread read option. 14 looks like a gangly doofus with no quickness. Yeah, I don't know. I think I'm not ready to throw Aller under the bus and say that Prbula is the thing that we need and that's what's holding us back. I do think it would be worth seeing him again I said this after the Ohio State game, when things aren't going well and when nothing's working on offense, the value of trying something different goes up, right? I'm a big fan of if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But if it's broke, try to fix it, like try something to fix it. And that's where a little bit of Bo, I don't think would have hurt the situation. So I don't know. I think we'll wrap it up there. Jordan, do you have any last words?
No, I think that's pretty good. Yeah, it's obviously disappointing that we lost another somewhat close game to Ohio State and Michigan, and we're probably going to go 10, maybe 11-2 again, just like the cycle continues. But on the bright side, at least we get some new Big Ten opponents next year, so those are other big games we can lose, so we don't have to worry about that moving forward.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
Once again, shout out to everybody who joined us today. It's much more than we expected, obviously. I wish I could have been at my, computer, not in the car, but that's how it goes. Look forward to going over next week's game. We got Rutgers coming up, so kind of nervous. Rutgers isn't that bad of a team. So
that's going to be an interesting one. They're going to have to pick themselves up off the mat because Rutgers, the thing with Rutgers under Schiano is like they want to be here right now. I don't know if Penn State will want to be there next week, but Rutgers will. That'll be an interesting one.
Yeah. So I think that's all I got. If you don't got anything else, I'll throw out the outro and we'll sign off.
Absolutely. Thank you everybody for tuning in, and hopefully you'll give us a like and subscribe and tune in next week.
All right. Nittany No Huddle Nation out.
Thanks for watching the Nittany No Huddle podcast. Check us out on Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook. Podcasts are posted weekly on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Make sure to like and subscribe so you never miss one of our new shows.